has a new book to help guide you with these steps to grasp your confidence and own your power. I love that.
Look around the room. You'll see that you're not so alone after all, and that unconfidence could look like any of us.
Maybe your whole life you have been told that the best wins, but I'm telling you right now that the best known will win. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Grasp Confidence Podcast. I'm your host, Tara LaFon Gooch, and we are on a mission to be the world's #1 personal development confidence because we interview the world's best, just top experts, and every single episode, we uncover powerful truths to developing confidence and achieving your wildest dreams. So, my guest today is quite an example of someone who went after his wildest dreams and achieved them all. I will let you introduce yourself, Emilio, but I'm so happy that you are on the show today, my friend. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so very much, Tara. It's really an honor and delight to be here and to be with your audience. As far as a brief overview, so my name is Dr. Emilio Justo, and I am a Cuban refugee escaping Castro's communist regime with my parents at a young age when I was a young child. And unlike many Cubans who came over via Miami, no, we did not. We came over through Mexico, and then with the help of church organizations, we actually settled in Gary, Indiana. For those of you who are old enough to remember Gary, the home of Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5. So I did the majority of my growing up there, and I was very fortunate and blessed to have a wonderful upbringing with lots of love and nurturing. I am an only child, and I worked very hard in my early years, especially in high school. I was fortunate enough to get into the University of Michigan's accelerated pre-medical medical program for 6 years. So I finished high school at 17. I became a medical doctor at the age of 23, did my 4 years of ophthalmology and oculoplastic residency training in Washington, D.C. And then I came to sunny Arizona just to get into the sunshine and the warm weather. At the age of 27 is when I started my medical practice. So I've been doing this now full time for 35 years. Yes, you can do the math. And we'll be starting my 36th year come August 1st. And really excited. I'm working as hard now as ever. And as you know, Tara, I've branched out now that my life has matured. I've branched out into doing some new ventures. I've done a couple of TEDx talks, which we may or may not get into later, and they've done extraordinarily well. And actually, the first one I'll mention very briefly, that it was stimulated by the fact that being a Cuban refugee and immigrant, my life's mantra, and I wasn't conscious about it as a child, but as I got a little older, I started thinking about this. And it was really always self-discipline, because I didn't have to have external discipline. My parents didn't hound me or didn't get a belt out. It was all came from within. So self-discipline, number one. Number two was resilience and perseverance in my life. And number three was delayed gratification. And that's what I refer to as my Cuban triad. And that's why I reached out to do my first TEDx talk, which was on delayed gratification, your superpower to success. And so I really, feel very strongly about that. My second TEDx talk, which was just a few months ago, was on unleashing the drive within, the obsession advantage to unprecedented success. So it's a talk that changes the paradigm on the concept of obsession being a positive one rather than a negative one. And then as I'm going through this journey and I saw how my first TEDx did so well, I decided to do another venture, which is try to write a book, which I'd never done before. I'd read many books, but never written one. And it was an exhaustive challenge, I must admit. But I felt like, really all this journey at this stage of my life, part of it is I wanted to get my word out to the world. But a large part of it truly is that, being a father, a spouse, having 3 teenage children who I love and adore, a 13-year-old daughter, she just turned 13 last week, and then 17 and 19-year-old sons. I wanted to leave a legacy behind of, what I stand for, what I believe in. And when I'm 6 foot under, they can watch my TEDx talks, they can read my book, they can even listen to my book because my book is also on Audible, and I narrated it myself, which I wanted to do. I had an incredible time doing that. I just loved narrating it, so that whether it be my children or future grandchildren or other generations, they'll always be able to hear my voice, and I can share with them my heartfelt feelings of what it's been like growing up and the things that I feel I've been blessed to have the success that I've had. That was a long answer to your question. Sorry about that.
I love it. Well, it's such a heroic journey. You're coming to this country unknowing of what to expect. You probably came with very little in your pocket. So in a lot of ways, we faced a lot of adversity in our lives. Some people might even say, is it even possible? But what you hit on was this resiliency, this ability to be successful, kind of, despite all odds. And it seems like you really formed a blueprint for success based on delayed gratification and these things. And I would like to hear a little bit more about that, because there's a lot of people listening to the show right now, Emilio, that they say, good for him. I'm glad he accomplished that. Is it even possible for me? What do you have to say to people like that?
Great question. And I feel firmly, and this is what I talk about so often in my writings, is that lack of privilege is not an obstacle to success. I feel that from the bottom of my heart. And you mentioned the blueprint. I think you said those words. And it's interesting, the subtitle to my book, which is The Power of Pause, Mastering Delayed Gratification for Success, the subtitle is A Blueprint for Resilience and Enduring Fulfillment. And so just to take you back quickly, so when Castro took over Cuba, and keep in mind, I was a young child, really the hero or heroes in this story are my parents. I can't even imagine what they went through, with a family and being adults and losing everything, losing their home, my father's business. When Castro took over, one of the first things that he did was he mandated that everyone go to their local bank and turn in their money, their currency, for a new currency that he had started, which was essentially worthless. My father never, ever, ever trusted Castro, and he buried his money in the backyard. And it was that money that still had value that soon thereafter he befriended a Canadian diplomat and was able to use that money on the black market to allow us to get out through Mexico. We were in Mexico for 6 months. And as you correctly pointed out, when we fled Cuba, we left with nothing but the clothes on our back. I mean, no material possessions. And, of course, I'm just a small child, so I can't really appreciate it. But gosh, can you imagine what my parents were feeling? And then once they were fortunate enough to have a church organization, Central Christian Church in Gary, Indiana, who basically adopted us, if you will, my father took on 2 jobs in Gary. He worked for U.S. Steel And then he also did all the maintenance and janitorial for the church. So he had 2 full-time jobs. My mother, who had her doctorate in education in Cuba, coming from a communist country, credentials don't transfer.
Mm.
She went to Southern Indiana, to Bloomington, where Indiana University is located, to restudy in a foreign language. All the while, I was sent, since my grandparents came over separately, their church, a Presbyterian church, was in a small college town called Tarkio College, Missouri, in Northwest Missouri. So my parents sent me to grow up with my grandparents from kindergarten through 4th grade. Had a great upbringing. It was so much fun. We lived right on the campus in one of the dorms. It's a tiny little room. And I just thought I was in heaven. I was surrounded by college students all the time. But all the while, my parents were getting reestablished. My mother was studying from scratch all over again, my father working and saving. And so by the time 5th grade came around, my mother was now working as a high school Spanish teacher. My father was able to finally decrease from 2 jobs to 1 job. And he saved enough to be able to purchase a home south of Gary in Crown Point, Indiana. So that's where I did my growing up from 5th grade through the end of high school. So that was kind of the early journey. And I tell you, I'm blessed to have gone through that. I mean, yes, were there challenging times? Of course, when you don't have a lot of material things. But the key is that one has the emotional support, the love, and the nurturing, both from my grandparents and my parents. And that's what made the difference. And it all came from the self-discipline that I preach, the resiliency, and the delayed gratification, because my life really has been a lot of delayed gratification up until recently. And I think I truly, in my heart of hearts, feel that anyone can succeed in life if they just practice those simple philosophies.
Absolutely. Well, I don't know how much you know about my background story, but I grew up in poverty, right? So I'm the youngest of 5, raised by a single mother. And there was many points in my youth when I thought, why me? Why this? And the father that I did have, he wasn't really around that much, and I haven't seen him since I was 14. He was an alcoholic. And I thought, you know what? The world is against me. And for years, I let it become this crutch. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. It's easy to look at other people on the outside and think they have XYZ, but they don't see that whole journey. And I feel like some of the most successful people actually didn't come from a place of where they had a lot of means. And it's those lessons that they learned along the way and how to shape those deficiencies, if you will, into actual avenues of opportunity. Because I think when you're hitting on this point of delayed gratification, in this day and age, we want it right now, don't we? We want everything right now because that's what Instagram and places like that have told us. Oh, you want a Lamborghini? 30 days, right? Well, it's not really logical. And I'm glad people want things, but at the same point in time, we have to learn lessons along the way in order to really get to those big goals sometimes. And nothing worth having is worth having overnight.
I couldn't agree with you more, Tara. I mean, just wise words that you're saying. And yes, we all have our struggles and our challenges. And just to name one, for example, growing up, when I entered my freshman year of high school, I developed a very, very serious medical condition, actually a skin condition, acne conglobata, which sounds like, oh, it's just acne. No, it's acne that I was written up in medical journals because I had a persistent fever that would not go away for literally 6 weeks. So I was hospitalized for 2 months, had 3 surgeries, missed school. And it was rough. I mean, it was difficult. But again, my parents were my backboard. They supported me. My mother stayed with me while my father was at work. She took a hiatus from teaching, and I continue to work hard even in the hospital to try and more or less keep up with my studies. Long story short, because I worked that hard, that I was even able to achieve. And I say this not from a bragging standpoint, but just to let your viewers understand that if you put your mind to it and if you really persevere and are disciplined, you can achieve things. And I ended up being valedictorian of my high school. And I didn't even know what valedictorian was. It wasn't until a few months of graduating that one of my fellow students said, "Hey, you may end up being valedictorian." And I'm like, "What? What is that?" I didn't even know what it was, as silly as that sounds. So it just goes to show that we all have struggles. We all have failures. Even in my professional career as an adult, I mean, I'm happy. Even in my book, I share some of the most embarrassing failures that I've had, where I've broken my own rule of delayed gratification. Instead, I tried to reach for instant gratification and failed miserably, almost leading me to bankruptcy. And so, you have to be able to embrace failure. By embracing failure, it becomes really not a temporary setback, but it's really a step forward, a bouncing forward towards success and towards accomplishments. And you have to be able to look at it that way. I mean, there's one author, I don't remember his name, who talked about the fact that when he comes home for dinner each night, the first thing he asks his kids are, "How many failures did you have today?" Right? And not as a negative thing, but as a positive thing, because it is through those failures that we become resilient and we learn from our mistakes. And really, there's no better way of learning than to make those mistakes. You got to own it. And when you own it, believe me, you learn from it. If you're given everything, as so many youth are, and even some of our kids' friends who are just given everything, it's unbelievable to me. And they don't own it. They don't cherish it. They don't value it as greatly as when you've earned it with your own blood, sweat, and tears.
So much wisdom in that. Honestly, so much wisdom in that. We value what we really pay for. And I don't always mean we pay for something monetarily, right? Maybe it's the blood, the sweat, the tears, the work, the time, right? The pain. And we feel like we really start to own something when we put in that effort and work. And I like to think of life as kind of like a video game. We go to one level and we've accomplished that level. Probably have learned something. We might have gotten a little beat up too along the way, right? Because things kind of can pop out of the bushes and surprise us, right? But then we get to that next level and we realize how much more prepared we are than when we started. And we have probably gotten a little more refined in that process and maybe smarter, right? And then you go to that next level and there's a new challenge that's presented. Success is definitely not linear. I can attest to that as well. We tend to think of success as here I start, here's where I go. But in reality, it looks more like, you'll appreciate this, a heart rate monitor.
Right. Yes.
Right?
No, that's very true. Very true. I couldn't agree with you more. That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Kind of feels like that sometimes. And it's all to, keep us wise and refined when we get to that more, increasingly higher next levels, that we're actually equipped and capable and confident too. I think all this builds confidence, wouldn't you say? I mean, failure's hard to go through when you're going through it, but doesn't it make you more equipped for future change? What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that by embracing that failure, learning from it, then the next thing you do, you become more confident, more self-assured. Then you may turn around and make, another mistake, have another failure, and that's okay. You got to just keep that positive mindset, which I know it's always easier said than done. I get it. I get it, but ultimately it can be done. And as human beings, let's face it, we all have our days when things don't look as rosy as we would like, and it's easy to get down on ourselves or down on life in general. But we just have to power through it and continue to move up and up in our life, really till the day we die, in my opinion. I mean, I see so many of my own patients who, become older and they retire, and, all they do is play golf every day. And I'm not saying that's bad, but I think that regardless of your age, there's so much to learn, so much to do, so much to accomplish. Educating yourself, reading, listening to audiobooks, doing new ventures like what I'm doing, right? I don't have to be doing this. I'm doing it for the love of expanding my mind, the love of my family, and to leave a little tiny mark on the world when I'm gone. That's the reason I'm doing it. So many other surgeons my age would be retired and out playing golf. I mean, I'm working, as my wife would share with you. She can't believe how hard I work every day, every weekend. I mean, I don't waste a moment of time. I'm working harder today than practically I have my entire life. And I'm enjoying it. That's the wonderful thing, that I'm enjoying what I'm doing because it serves a greater purpose in my mind.
We're supposed to work. We're supposed to be contributing. We're supposed to be learning. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I know there's a lot of, information about out there, work less, work less, work less. But honestly, if you're a purpose-driven person, and I am too, I don't ever see myself stopping. And I know my husband will, I'm sure when we're in that certain age of life, I'm sure he'll say, "When are we going to be done?" But he knows me better at this point. I will be starting something forever because I truly have this purpose, and I have to keep expressing this creative capacity, right? And helping other people do the same thing. I think that's really important too. But we've touched on a lot today. We've talked about that, where you came from and where you are today. But was there a point in your childhood or at some point when you said, "No, I don't want this anymore. I don't want this as my reality anymore. I want to go for all of the success. I want to have all of these accolades. I want to do all of these things." What was that catalyst point for you where you decided to make that change and say, "I don't want this life anymore. I want this as my North Star"?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Tara. And there's two parts of my life that come to mind. One is that in my 35-year practice career, about midway through, or maybe slightly less than midway, again, I made some serious mistakes in my practice business, and I let certain, let's call it managerial people, kind of run the show, and I was very, very hands off, only to come to find out that basically bills had not been paid. I mean, things were just going south, and I didn't even realize it because I took my eye off the ball. I was going to work, and I was doing my clinical duties and surgeries and things like that. But from a business perspective, I was just completely hands off. And it was at that moment when I had to actually terminate this administrator managerial person that I became really obsessed. And again, my second TEDx talk on obsession, I became obsessed with really moving forward in a different manner where my eye was on the ball at all times. And it's really the second half of my career that just took off because I became integrally involved in every aspect of the practice. I wasn't just showing up, seeing patients, and going home like I was before. So that's one of the turning points. And then the other one was that after all that occurred, I made a second huge mistake. And again, I'm a bit embarrassed to share it, but I share it openly, including in my book, which selfishly I'll promote here, The Power of Pause, Mastering Delayed Gratification for
I love
Success. But that came about when I went away from my beliefs and I tried the instant gratification route. And this was in the early 2000s. This was about 20 years ago. And back then, I don't know how it was in your area, but certainly here in the Phoenix, Arizona metropolitan area, the real estate market was super hot, right? Everything was going up. And this was back in the days when the banking industry was so loose that you could acquire a $500,000 home for effectively little to no money down.
Mm-hmm.
And these mortgages were just, sign here and you have a mortgage. And in a very short period of time, within less than a year, I acquired, I kid you not, over 20 properties that were each in the $500,000 range. How stupid was that? And this all started because I went to a seminar, teaching people to kind of do this sort of thing. And I got sucked into it emotionally and thinking, oh, wow, this is it. This is what's going to turn the tide and I'm going to, become rich and wealthy and blah, blah, blah. And lo and behold, I found myself in this incredible hole where I could not get anywhere near enough rent to cover my mortgage payments. And I was just bleeding that money right and left. And finally, little by little, I had to dig myself out of that hole and get rid of those properties one by one. And it was very painful, very painful. And again, I came very close to bankruptcy. The only thing that saved me is that I had a real job, which was my practice. And so I could afford to do certain things that maybe others in a similar situation may not have been able to, because I had the cash flow to still keep living. But it was a very scary time. And I must say, I give my wife all the credit to resurrect me, because she was against this idea from the beginning. But even having made that mistake, that huge mistake, she never rubbed my nose in it. She was always my supporter and my confidant. And she kept telling me, look, life has given you a whole lot of lemons right now. But what you need to do is you need to stay strong and turn these lemons into lemonade. And ultimately, that's what I did. And in short order, it took probably 7, 8, 9 years thereafter. I was back at the very top of my game and haven't looked back since. So it was a very difficult learning time, and one that I share simply to let people know and let your viewers know that we're all human and we all make mistakes. And no matter how academically successful I've been, I still do stupid things like everyone else, right? I'm not above anyone else. I'm a human being first and foremost. It doesn't matter that I have an MD after my name. It doesn't matter. I'm just a human being. And human beings are fraught with mistakes and failures and errors and poor judgment. And that was poor judgment when I sought the instant gratification instead of staying with my delayed gratification mantra that I've had my whole life.
Wow. We can all go a little sideways from time to time.
Yeah.
But what matters is that we just get back on the road, right?
Right.
And this happens, I like to think of purpose as a road. It's a road that we're on. We can physically drive off the road and our car keeps going, but it's bumpy. It's not smooth. We're gonna probably hit some holes. We might scratch up our car. But at any point in time, we can get back on that road of purpose and do the things that are aligned with us, aligned with our values, aligned with things that we believe in, and align with our strengths, right? So that is a perfect example of, deviating a little bit and saying, I want this instant gratification. Maybe I'm not 100% sure about it, but I'm going to try it. We get off that road a little bit, we get dinged up, we can come right back on the road at any point in time. So I love that analogy. It's a powerful story because people need to hear this. I think it's really easy to beat ourselves up and, make mistakes. And I do all the time too. But the point of it is that we get back up, we don't stay down, and we keep going on that road, that path for us, right?
Absolutely.
But you have had this just incredible success as of late, especially with the 2 TEDx talks and your book. And I really want to congratulate you because, ladies and gentlemen, these aren't regular TEDx talks. So I'm just going to say that. The average TEDx talk gets a couple hundred views, guys. A lot of people don't understand that or realize that, but it's actually really true. The average TED talk just gets a couple hundred views, and there's a lot of them released every month. Emilio's talk hit that viral status and really went big globally. So how many views have we had so far, my friend? It's okay, brag about yourself.
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, again, I don't mean to brag, but you asked the question, and it just so happens that I checked on this. I don't check it as often as when my first TEDx talk came out. I was all excited and I was checking it every day and all that. Now I don't really do that. Maybe once a week if I'm lucky. But I did check it just before going live with you. And so my first TEDx talk, which the video has been out 9 months on delayed gratification, it has 6.1 million views. So I'm very humbled and blessed for that. And that it's interesting in the TEDx world, and you're familiar with the TEDx world. They talk about how the TED organization may not publish your video anywhere from, could be as quickly as a month after to it could be 6, 8, 9 months later. The first one happened to come out 5 weeks later, which was amazing. So I kind of got a little accustomed to that. When I did my second TEDx in Ontario, Canada, it took 3.5 months for it to come out, and I was going crazy. And I just had a text the other day from one of the other speakers I met there, and he was so frustrated. He said, "Can you believe that my video hasn't come out yet?" And I felt so bad for him because I get it. But anyhow, the second one came out just a little over 4 weeks ago, and on Obsession, the Obsession Advantage, and it has over 800,000 views. So again, incredible, and a lot of wonderful comments. And I really do my best to keep up on the comments and to reply back to any of the individuals who take the time to write me comments on the YouTube video. So yeah, so I'm really excited about that. I'm humbled. I'm grateful. Hopefully next year. Right now, I'm just so busy with so many things, but I would like to do a third one. And but as you know, Tara, I mean, it's a process. It's a process. Going through the application process, getting your thoughts down, writing the talk, editing the talk, memorizing the talk, delivering the talk. It's such an involved process. One that gives us energy and is fun, but it's very time intensive. And you have a great one yourself, so I'm preaching to the choir here, but yeah, but thank you for mentioning that. I appreciate that. If any of your viewers would like to go and add another view and a like and a share and maybe a comment, I would greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I just want to point out, just, for everybody's benefit, when someone does a TEDx talk or a TED talk, it really means a lot to that speaker to like and leave a comment. And one of the reasons is because that the comments, we can hold on to that, right? The comments don't go away, and we can look back at those comments and get re-enthused and say we're really making a difference out there in the world. So one of the best, most kindest things that we can do if we really enjoy a talk is to leave a comment and like it, and also share it with our friends, with our networks, with people that could benefit from the talk. Another great thing that we can do to support people, just like Emilio and I, is to do the same for our books, right? So if you read one of our books, leave a review. It actually makes the world of difference. And it's one of those things, I hold on to all of those reviews so dear and close to my heart. They mean so much to me. And it's something that continues to build the legacy of the talk or the book, because the more reviews we get, the more it stays on top of the algorithms out there. And this helps more people see this really good, valuable content, because it's really easy to kind of get lost in the shuffle. So the comments really help, and those continual comments help it again stay in that algorithm to where more people can still see it. And that's really important. But I absolutely loved our conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come here today and to impart some words of wisdom to the audience.
Thank you so very much, Tara. I
Yeah,
mean, it's really been a delight to participate in this, to get to know you better, to get to know your audience, and I'm very humbled and grateful for the opportunity. Thank you.
absolutely. And I would really like to pick your brain on one thing before we leave.
Absolutely.
Since this is a personal development podcast and people are really wanting to learn how to become the best versions of themselves and most confident versions of themselves and go after these big dreams like you're talking about, stepping on the TED stage and writing books and sharing our stories, how does someone gain the confidence to do that? Maybe even it's taking that first big step. You have any words of wisdom?
Well, I don't know if the words are that wise, but I think truly you just got to put yourself out there and not be afraid, and certainly not fear any sort of criticism or negativity. I think it's important to kind of strategically plan out your goals, maybe consider writing them down. I must admit, I've not been consistent about that throughout my life, but I think writing them down. I think also, the goals that one comes up with, whether they be written or in your mind, I think they need to be big goals. Goals that are reachable, that are achievable, but I think it's common that sometimes people come up with goals that are a little too easy. I think having a bigger goal and then quantifying the steps along the way, when you have small wins, celebrate that small win. You don't have to wait till you achieve the big goal. Celebrate the small wins along the way. Also, I think that be a little judicious and careful about those around you. And here's what I mean. That, we all have friends, we all have family members, and generally speaking, our friends and family members truly, sincerely do want the best for us. I don't deny that. But sometimes their view of things is not the best, because sometimes they may actually be a roadblock. They may say, oh gosh, you're dreaming too big. Oh, are you crazy? That you'll never become that. You'll never achieve that. They put in these mental roadblocks that get in the way. And so I think sometimes maybe speaking less and sharing your goals less with your network and your circle actually is better, which may sound a little counterproductive, and it may not be the mainstream thinking, but I've always been one to kind of hold my goals and my thoughts near and dear to myself and only share it with very, very select people. Like for example, my wife, who I would share anything with, or my parents, but don't be blabbing too much, because I think there's a certain negativity in the air that may not be obvious and may not be malicious, but certainly plays a role in slowing people down and derailing them from what they want to achieve. So, and I write about that in my book, because I think one has to be judicious in who we use, let's say, as a mentor, to make sure that that person truly, truly, truly has our best interest at heart and gives us sound advice.
I love that. So true. So true. Well, that is such great advice. So, everybody, dream bigger and write it down. Get clarity on those goals, right?
Absolutely.
Because when we dream big, you know what? I would rather fail at a big goal,
That's right.
right?
Right.
Than not try at all. And my number one advice that I tell myself anytime I fail, let me know if you like this, is that I only failed because I didn't ask for more.
Great. I love that.
What? I keep going after bigger things and bigger things. And who knows who will say yes. But I knew this, if I never ask, the answer is always going to be no. I love
Absolutely.
that.
Very, very sage words of advice there. I love it.
Yes, absolutely. Write this down, everybody. Watch this episode twice. But thank you so much for coming on the show today. I know I learned a lot. I'm sure everybody listening to this learned a lot as well. And for everybody's benefit, where is the best place besides YouTube to watch your TED Talks? Where is the best place to get a hold of you, my friend?
Well, if they go to my personal website, I have a personal website separate from my practice website. And my personal website is dremiliojusto.com, and that's spelled DREMILIOJUSTO.com. And through that website, there are links to not only the TEDx talks, but links to a whole variety of videos and podcasts. If you go to the contact page there, you can email me directly. And I always, I get those all personally. I don't have anyone who filters through that. I will get it personally, and I will make sure and respond. And there's also a toll-free number at the top of the homepage, which again comes to me directly. So just using my website is the easiest way to learn about me and what I have to offer, and to contact me directly. Thank you, Tara.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for tuning in today, everyone, and we will catch you on the next episode.